Hello, I'm Sam Highfield, a visual effects supervisor, and a short while ago I made a video that went down very well about how I found it's actually cheaper in the long run to hire these quite expensive VFX artists that cost as much as £500 a day, perhaps even more, as opposed to the artists that cost about £250 a day. And the way that I eliminated the scary risk of hiring someone who costs so much per day, especially because in visual effects you have these black holes of time where things can take a lot longer than you expect them to, and everyone needs to be paid, of course. The way that I eliminated the scary runaway element of that. So I can do it, no problem, hire these high-end people, even for low-budget projects. Okay, so let's imagine, before I get into this, so just to give the example quickly, the way that I came across this revelation quite a few years ago now was, let's say there's 4 shots that need to be done, and the very similar level of work. Now, with the VFX artists that I used to hire, which cost around £250 a day, they could get through about 1 shot a day. So imagine the generalists, and they can do everything required for this 1 shot. So it'd be 1 day, so that's 250, 250, 250, 250. That's £1,000 to do these 4 shots. However, what I found was that when I got this someone at £500 a day, they spend 1 day and they can do 4 shots by themselves. I thought, that's absolutely incredible. So for the same amount of work done, so for the same quality, do I want to get these 4 shots done? Do I pay £500 or £1,000 to get the same thing done? So that was a point of revelation for me where I realized, wow, it's actually cheaper to hire this person at £500 a day than it is for the £250 a day people. So let's say I could go back and tell Sam from the past. So I'm like future Sam going to Sam from the past now and say, okay, Sam, you can, when you're costing this project in terms of how much it's going to cost you in terms of VFX artist time, how much time it's going to take, in terms of how much it's going to cost, would you like to pay £400,000 or £800,000 for the exact same end result? Okay, so what would you do for the exact same thing? Would you rather pay £400,000 or would you rather pay £800,000? It's not a trick question. And yes, there's something that's going to be revealed here. I would say, okay, I would like to get them for £400,000 because that is also, if it's not going to cost me as much, that's a significant saving there. If it's not going to cost me as much for the artist, that's a saving that I can pass on to the client. And it's so much that can actually make the difference between winning a project and then losing a project. Okay. And then past Sam would say, okay, how are you going to do it? And I would reveal, this is the way that you do it. So when you're asking for people's day rates, when you're ringing people up saying, how much is your day rate? 250. Oh, okay. How much is your day? 500. 500. You know, let's go and have a look at which day rate produces the end result there. Okay. Okay, now let's also reveal the time. Okay, so let's go and take a look at this now. So obviously this is a bit of a crystal ball moment where you could basically, right at the beginning, you decide, shall I go for more expensive artists or shall I go for cheaper artists? Okay, and when you can see into the future makes it very clear. So hang on, so we get it done in 80 days as opposed to 320 days, that's 4 times longer. So it's 80 days instead of 320 days, it's half the cost. I think, wow, so that means it always makes sense to bring in these high value artists, right? But the thing is, you don't have a crystal ball, do you? What you see is this at the beginning. And you're finding out how much these artists cost and say, how much, do you cost? Oh, 250, okay, great. £500, that's too expensive. We're a low budget production here. But actually, when you see it all together like that is how it's always worked out for me. Whether it's been on bigger budget things or on low budget things, it always scales in about the same way. And someone might be looking at the screen now and thinking, hang on, I've been doing this my whole career. Okay, now there's a really good reason why you would do this, right? Because this is scary, isn't it? Hiring someone at £500 a day and you're thinking, what if it takes, because the nightmare is that you hire someone at £500 a day, they get a bit complacent and they say, oh, well, you know, especially if they're remote working, because that's how I hire a lot of my freelancers. We do remote working. If they're remote working, I can't look over the shoulder. I don't know what they're doing all day. So for most of the day, they could be, you know, watching TV, playing games, they could be watching porn. I have literally no idea what they could be doing. And then I get sent a massive bill and not much to show for it. And then I say, oh, can you do some revisions as well? And they're like, oh, revisions? Oh, that's going to take a long time, you know, and I'll see when I can get around to it. And then it'll take a long time. I have to send you a big bill and you know, and that's the nightmare, isn't it? That basically you're going to get a load of time wasted. I've got an even better story than that, which is actually from one of my other videos. One of my VFX artists who was doing some tracking for me, they sent the shot over. The shot was fine, but the tracking there's a lot wrong with it. And I went over to the VFX artist, thought I'd make a little mini project of helping this guy. So we opened up the project file, we looked at the mechanics of how they put the shot together. And I suggested a radically different way for the tracking that did a great job of the tracking, made it bang on, and it only took us 20 minutes. And I said to the VFX artist, okay, be honest, how long did it take you using your other method that didn't really work so well? And he said, I'll be honest, Sam, 10 hours. Wow. So 20 minutes goes into 10 hours 30 times, okay? That's what I call a black hole of time, where someone gets stuck, where in the decision-making process, they make the wrong decision very early on about what to do. They go down the rabbit hole for a very long way, and they realize there's no answer down there, okay? And they should have made a different idea, made a different decision about what to do earlier on. And when you hear things like that, like something can take 30 times longer, that's really scary, because no industry can sustain paying someone 30 times the amount. Okay, so for one day, that's like paying someone like £20 instead of for the task, which they should be charging £20 for that 20-minute task, as opposed to say £500. So that's a massive, massive problem, and that would give any kind of producer nightmares, but they spend all this time doing something and not much comes back from it. Okay, so my solution to that is the fixed price per shot unit. So what I'll do is that when I have a project, and this is most lucid when the or the photography is locked. So the production is finished, the principal photography is done, the edit is done, the edit is locked. I can see exactly what shots we're working with, exactly what the plates look like. And it's at that point I'll go and make my spreadsheet for my freelancers with a nice big thumbnail of the shot, a description, and a breakdown of the fixed payment I'm offering for that shot. So that can be either very simple as like a generalist where one artist does the whole shot, or it can break it down into like matte painters, 3D modelers, texturing, lighting, rigging, animation, compositing, tracking, and all those things there. So what I'll do is I'll take a look at the shot, and I'll decide the best way to achieve the end result that the director wants. So I can say, right, the whole shot needs tracking, we'll need a matte painting there, we'll need a 3D model there, we'll shoot real elements for that section, and the whole thing needs to be composited. So when I'm doing that, I'll look at it quite precisely. So for example, let's say there is a tracking that needs to be done, okay? I'll know exactly where that 3D model needs to be placed in that scene, and I'll be able to think, well, is there good tracking points there? Do we have a lens distortion grid for that particular camera and lens combination? You know, if it's not going to track well in that area where we get some sliding, is someone who's pretty good at tracking really going to have to go in there? Say, I'm talking about a 3D track now, where they have to do some like manual points and do a lot of setup and a lot of testing in order to really lock down that track there. Say if it's keying, say it's like a 5-second shot on a green screen. I wouldn't say 5-second green screen, that's normally done at this price. What I'll do is I'll take a close look at it, and let's say we've got a difficult section where you've got like, say, like a really blurred edge next to a sharp edge. You've got like a depth of field issue there, where we say we've got one say blurry hair in the foreground versus a sharp edge, and they are intersecting, okay? That's going to be about 8 times more work than if everything was as sharp, okay? So it's by going in at that resolution of pricing that I think I'm pretty good at deciding how much time that shot is going to go and take. On the other hand, okay, it could be say for that 3D model, okay, is it going to be quite far away from the camera? If so, can we get away with a real-time rendering solution, which means if you have to do revisions to 3D model later on, you know, the rendering is going to be like instant instead of taking, say, 3 days, which has a big effect on how much work there is. Or let's say if there's some rotoscoping, is it this kind of thing that machine learning could do most of the work for us? You know, these are the kind of things. So when I'm looking at the shot, I'm looking at what solutions can we use, what problems will there be, and taking all of that into account with knowledge from working with really great artists in the past, where I've got a pretty good idea of how long it takes to do something. I will then put an idea of how long it takes to do that work. Okay. Now, a lot of people will be shouting at me through the screen saying, "Oh, Sam, fixed payment for a VFX shot, you know, it always takes longer. I've done things in the past where I've done something like that and it's sorry, it's taken, you know, longer. I would have been better off earning minimum wage, doing some other job, that kind of thing." And I hear a lot of those stories. But here's the thing, let's say I am wrong with this one. I am quite precise most of the time, and the reason why is because I've made it a very painful lesson for me to change these things. So let's say I'm wrong, and the VFX artist comes up to me calmly and says, instead of being fire and brimstone like the person I just described, they say, "Sam, I think this is going to take more like 8 days instead of the 4 days, which it looks like you've budgeted for this shot here." So I'll look at it, and if I'm wrong, I'll take ownership of my mistake, and I will say, "You know what, I think it is going to be 8 days, you're right." So, and then I will then go and increase the fixed payment. So the fixed payment has now gone up. And where does that money come from? The money comes from the profits, okay? So which means basically I get a pay cut. That's why it's quite painful for me to make these mistakes. But because I've done it over a while, and that's right, because if I've made a mistake, I'm the one responsible for it, and I should be the one to pay for it. It's like anything in business. You pay for things to be done correctly. You don't pay for incompetence, right? So because of that painful way, I think I've got a pretty good fine resolution idea on how much VFX shots cost when you do them optimally using the best methods, okay? So that's the work there. On the other hand, if the VFX artist comes up to me like fire, because I'm quite confident in this, if an artist comes up to me and says, you know, "Sam, you know, you've not paid me enough for this, is going to take ages." Take the example of the artist I described before, where they took 10 hours to do not a very good job of the tracking, versus the 20-minute solution I suggested, which worked really well. So what I can say is, okay, why do you think it takes so long? Show me your project. Let's go and take a look at it together. And we'll take a look at it. And I normally most times I'll come up with a solution, and I say, it doesn't have to take so long. You can just do this, and it does a much better job in much less time. And normally the artist is like, "Oh, right, yeah, that does work. I didn't know that." And that's how they become better artists as well. So it's nice to see people grow in that way there. So that's why I think this works quite well, because this defeats the number one nightmare, which is to have runaway costs. Where imagine if that artist who took 30 times longer, they say, "Okay, I've done it wrong for a few days. I know it should have only taken me a few hours, but I've taken a week. I need paying." What it means is that I will not pay that artist for doing it in the wrong way. I will do quite a lot in the beginning before a VFX artist even starts a shot. With on the spreadsheet, I'll come up with suggestions of techniques to use. I'll do a lot to try and guide that person in the shortest, straightest line straight to the solution. Okay, I'll do a lot. But if that artist goes or does something the wrong way and takes a very long time to do something that's not very good, then I don't pay for that. Okay, what I will do is I'll give them a free lesson, which makes them a better artist, and you can do it much quicker next time. But they do need to fix that shot using the technique that I showed. In fact, if we walked through it together, we would have done it by that point anyway, so they know for the next shot. So that is the number one thing about why this is great, is because it stops those runaway costs. Okay, if I'm wrong, I take the hit, I give the artist more. I get a lesson then to just be better at pricing things accurately. Okay, and if the artist is wrong, they take the hit. They get a free lesson from me, and then learn how to do it better next time, which makes you become a better artist anyway. Next one, you've got a margin, and what that is, the margin is because nothing in the real world works without some kind of error margin. Not even the best VFX artist knows exactly how long a shot will take, right? The next one is fixes, which is quite a juicy topic. So basically there's kind of like two types of fixes, I'd say. So one of them is from me, VFX Supervisor, where I'll take a look at the artist's work and just make sure that it's what we expected. And typically on simpler shots, there's not many fixes required, especially if I'm working with high-end artists. There's not really that many fixes, or it might just be something simple like, can you just remove this matte line that you forgot to take care of? It says, oh yeah, it's just things that happen when you become overly familiar with looking at a shot for a long time. So that works. On a more complicated shot, it's typically more fixes, and so I will budget more time for fixes. So that's VFX Supervisor fixes. Now, the next one is how many fixes is the director or the executive producers, how many fixes are they going to want, okay? And also, I just use plural there, directors maybe, and executive producers. So if you're on a project, well, I've been on where there's been, say, I've had to please 2 directors, 3 executive producers, and then a few more things from like the television stations who bought the show. They all had a say in the VFX as well. So how many people have we got to please here? So if it's more people that we have to get the shot past, it's gonna mean we're gonna put more money is required to do those fixes, because it's definitely going to be more work if we have to please more people. Okay, so I explain that to productions. I say, listen, you can have every man and his dog having a say about the VFX, but it's just going to cost you more. And then when we use that rationale, they kind of realize what happens there. Okay, so right, and in terms of how many fixes is the director or executive producer going to want? Now, I'll put this at 2 extremes. You've got the very precise director, where we'll only need between 0 and 2 revisions. Okay, I'll describe the perfect director that us VFX people love, and that is basically a director who's very clear, they have a good strong vision, and they don't change their mind. Okay, and perhaps they can even do like a little sketch of what they want the shot to look like, or maybe they're even like a concept artist, which is fantastic. So we've got a really clear idea about what that director likes. Now, the other kind of director which we can work with, but when you're talking about maybe like 15 plus revisions per shot, okay, typically that's the kind of director who'll say to you, just make it look cool, okay? And they're also the kind of person who changes their mind a lot, and they're a perfectionist. So what that means is that, say we'll work on a shot, we'll do it how we thought they wanted it. They'll take a look at it and they'll say, nah, that's not quite right. Can we change this, this, and this? And by the way, while we're there, can we make the smoke exactly like this, and this leaf exactly like that, and let's do a few more versions of that. And then you do all these, a lot of fine work on these really kind of microscopic details. And at the end of that, they say, you know what, it's not working. Let's do something completely different, okay? That might require a lot of revisions. In fact, what I would normally say is that fixes, they're actually minor fixes. So that's basically changing small things about the shot, okay? If it becomes like the point where they want something completely different doing, I would actually go and price that as like a completely new VFX shot. And the other one had to be paid for, because that is a platform at which this new shot is built upon, because that was the work that's required to get up to that point. So we can work with people like that, but I need to tell the production straight away that if you want to be doing the work over and over again, it's going to cost them more money. So if you want to do that and they got a lot of money to throw at VFX, that's fine. We can work with them, and to the end of time to doing it, as long as they're willing to pay for that. Okay. Problems start coming up when some VFX studios, they say to these productions, make as many changes as you want, make as much work for us as you want, but we won't increase the amount that we charge them. That's when a lot of problems come up, and they can do that. Another solution is that if they don't want to pay more for it, okay, can we remove a shot from somewhere else? So yes, we can put a lot more resources and money and time on this, but we must subtract it from somewhere else. Okay, and then the tricky solution a tricky problem comes up when they don't want to do that either. And then that's a case of you standing your ground then. Okay, so that's basically how I do this system here. Another question that came up for the fixed payment system is time. So with this fixed payment system, because you're not doing all the work kind of like smashed together in one, so you might have a shop where it pays you £2,000, but you might have to wait, say, instead of £500 a day, £2,000, that's 4 days. But that 4 days might be spread out over, say, 10 days. So I'll give an example here. So you spend 2 days here, a third day here, and a fourth day here. So out of that 10 days, you're spending 4 days working, and that's 6 days not working. So what I normally do is, especially because I tend to hire more generalists, is that I can make a lot of use of your time, and I can normally fill in these gaps here with other shots, so there's no negative space, and that you're always busy. But let's say, especially say you do 3D modeling, and that means that you're quite at the beginning of the chain. So you've done your 3D model, then it needs to go to someone else where they texture it, and then it's rigged, animated, rendered, and then composited and all that kind of thing. So you might be waiting a long time. Now with this system here, during this time, if it is just blank time, then that's basically time you're not being paid for. Okay, so that's a negative of this system. I know some people do retainers, but I haven't figured out a way in which, especially if you want, say, paying £500 a day for doing nothing. Okay, you could say, oh, but at least I'm available. But I haven't figured that out yet, how I can pay £500 a day for someone doing nothing. I'd like to hear the person who has got that figured out. I'm not sure, I've not really heard of that in the VFX industry. Certainly not, maybe at a higher level. That's something you can do in, say, like the oil industry, but VFX industry where it's a bit lower profit. So that's the system now. So let's say this is an issue for you, and let's say you're in very high demand, and you've done these 2 days of work here, and you've got it's like a first draft level, and then you've gone off on another project, and then I say to you, oh, by the way, can you come back and do that fix? And they're like, whoa, I'm on a different project now. So what we can do in that case, there's no loss, don't worry, is that what I can do is that if you don't want to hang around to the fixes, then I can pay you for all this here. Okay, so that means that, let's say this is £2,000, that represents 600. That means I can pay you 1,400 because you've not done the fixes, right? What I will do is when it does come around to the fixes, and let's say you don't want to do it, what I'll do is, because I insist on having project files, I'll say, okay, if you don't want to do it, I've offered it to you first, I've given you first choice in doing it. If you don't want to stick around, well, we'll give this fixes money to another artist, and they can use your project files to go and make the fixes. Okay, so you will lose some money here, but then again, you've not done that work anyway. So basically, that's how you can eliminate the problem of time there. Because in any situation, you don't get instant feedback, and you might not be able to start on a job straight away. So I think that works out quite well. So in conclusion, that's how I do the fixed payment system. The reason why I created it was mainly to stop the runaway problem of time, because in VFX we do have these what I call black holes of time and money, where you can do the wrong technique, it doesn't look very good, and you spent a load of time and a load of money, and that can derail a project, it can bankrupt a company. That's really bad. So this fixed payment per shot stops that. So let's take that nightmare situation where it's scary to hire someone at, say, £500 a day or £600 a day. So what we're doing with the system is we're not paying them a day rate, we're basically paying them based on their value. So what that means is that I'll price this based on about £500 a day. So if they can do everything that I want from them, then they'll earn £500. If they do a really great job and they can think of an even better way to do it, to do a quality job in less time, then they'll be able to get through this quicker, and maybe they can earn £700 a day, £1,000 a day. And because I price this in a way that I make profit per shot, that means that when they complete shots quicker, I'm making profit quicker as well, which is great. And conversely, let's say that person who wants a day rate of £500, let's say they get really lazy and they work really ineffectively and slowly and all that kind of thing. Actually, that £500 a day person might actually earn just £200 a day or £100 a day, and it's only their own fault that they're not that productive. Okay, so basically that stops the runaway costs there. So this was really a great system for me, and the reason why is because in the early days, especially when I did like a lot of low budget things, is I used to think, well, if I could do it all myself maybe, and you know, I'll work 20 hours a day and I'll only sleep because my computer needs to render, and I'll set my computer to work while asleep and all that kind of thing, and just eat kind of like instant kind of food at my desk and all that, which is a very unhealthy way to work, and you don't do your best working at that kind of rate, in my opinion. It used to think that I want to do everything myself, and because I hired these people in the beginning at, say, like students and such, who could go on to do great things, but at the time that's all I could afford, like, you know, £150 a day, £200 a day kind of rate, and they'd run into so many problems and stumble so much, and I have to spend so much time supervising them, teaching them, suggesting things to do, that it is basically quicker if I just did it myself. And that was really disappointing for me, because I thought, have I just got to do everything on my own? But then when I did this quite radical change in thinking, it allowed me to bring on those £500 a day artists using this system, even for low budget things, because it just scales so well. And they normally do a great job. They normally got like a great attitude, because I've worked in the industry for quite a while and learned a lot about that. And it's just a bit of a dream, really. Less supervision time for me, less stress, and we can go straight to the solution. And here's a little analogy to end with, and that is no engine likes to be run at 100% all the time. Imagine you have like a little car, and you're redlining it, you're pushing up to its maximum all the time. It's going to break, the bolts are going to shake loose, it's going to be very stressful, and there's going to be all sorts of complaints coming from it. And that's because, let's say you have like easy, medium, and hard shots. So on a less experienced artist who can charge, say, £200 a day, a medium shot will take them to 100%, and they'll run into a lot of problems and they need a lot of help. But if you give a medium difficulty shot to a very high-end person, they're going to be at, say, like 50% on the engine, and they're running your engine at 50%. You can go all day, it's smooth, it's not stressful, and then all the problems that would come up that could basically, really burn out that smaller car or make a lot of problems for them. They try to do 10 hours doing something which should do 20 minutes. A more experienced person can just go over all these, get past all these problems. They can knock all these problems out, pretty much as soon as they come up. They can carry on smoothly, and the work gets done nice and smoothly. So what I'm saying is, this is nice and smooth, and this is a lot of stress, okay? Okay, that's it. I'm Sam Highfield, VFX Supervisor. Consider hiring me for your next project. Send me a message and we can have a nice talk about what you want to do. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.